if there's something big you want to go create and do, you've got to declare you're going to do it.
Yeah.
How are you going to get people to support you and rally around you if you keep that to yourself?
Without the declaration, you're not rallying anybody. And so really important.
I think these men were willing to let go of their ego, which is very difficult. It's much easier said than done. And I still sometimes get offended when people will call me up or call me out.
There's a different type of freedom that most people in our world and even in our free country aren't experiencing. God wants us to have governmental freedom, for sure. Even in a country where we have in large part had that for 250 years, how many people in our country are actually free?
Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Leader Podcast. Today, Drew and Tate and I are excited to discuss a little bit about the United States of America and more specifically the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July. And we're excited to get into leadership lessons that we can learn from the story of America and the story of America's founding. And just curious for you two, like when you think about everything that we feel passionate about as far as leadership and what we're trying to convey in our show, what stands out? Like, what stands out to you from the story of America's founding when you think about leadership principles showing up throughout that story?
The first thought, there's probably a tie to leadership, but my first thought is it's interesting when you meet people who are not from the U.S. or live in the U.S. and they talk about what they view as the 4th of July. And it's like, you guys throw the biggest party every year for your country. Like there's this pride, like proud to be an American. And I think it's, first off, I just think it's interesting that how much we collectively, maybe not everybody in the U.S., but how collectively we love the United States of America and what it represents and what the men who created this country and drafted our Constitution, like what the values they stood for. So I guess there are some leadership lessons in that they created something bigger than them. And I just think that's one of the beautiful things about America. Like we are like a beacon to the world in a lot of ways when it comes to government, despite all the problems we might each be able to find in the current state of our government. And so I just think that's pretty neat. And sometimes we don't realize like how big of a deal celebrating this is every year. And what we make this. And I can't wait to see what this year is at 250. So
yeah, for sure. Well, and that's one of the cool things about is that, yeah, to your point, like with all its flaws, it's more or less lasted 250 years, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, the thought that comes to mind, especially in those times, like I don't know that it's like the perfect alignment with what we talk about all the time, but I think of the sacrifice those guys had to make and what level that was. Because in those days, it wasn't like, hey, I'm getting paid to go take this job. It was more like, hey, I'm going to leave the farm for the next, I don't know how long, to go try to establish all this for the betterment of an entire, building a nation.
Risk your life, even.
For me, yeah, and it's hard for me to fathom just the mindset going into that, because I can't think that they knew exactly what they were doing, like at the start of that, and like it builds over time. But just pretty wild, and the willingness to step out and just go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that is one of the first like things we can pull out, like from a lot of the founding fathers, but also from a lot of the individuals who were just a part of the effort in general, is like there was a commitment to something bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there was also some personal selfish interest, like I want to be free. Like I want to be able to practice my religion without this pressure or whatever. Right. And
I don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah, or like I don't want to pay taxes to the king, right? So and though to your point, Tate, like had to have been this commitment to something greater than themselves, and that's like a great trait of a leader. Like I heard something the other day that was, these two kind of concepts together, which was like the daily work to create enough safety for people to tell you the truth, and like a level of connection for people to get committed to something bigger than themselves. And it seems like there was a lot of that going on during this effort, because we can even see examples like from George Washington and others where it clearly was not about them. Like if it was about him, he had opportunities to make it all about him over and over again.
He could have
and
been
he
the
chose
king.
not to. Yeah, I mean, he could have been the king. He could have, whatever. He could have probably been president for like 20 years or whatever. And it was never about him. It was about something so much bigger. And even like down the road, I mean, much of this was like later. It wasn't even like, hey, this is about something bigger right now. This is about something bigger for future generations, which I think is even harder sometimes to wrap our mind around. So, yeah, I'm curious, like from what you guys know about history, or like what you know about the story of the founding of America, like what was that like, or who was that? Who was organizing this? Hey, this is the bigger thing, or this is what's bigger than all of us.
Well, what's crazy to me, and I can't remember the exact age, so don't quote me on this, but I know if you look at the list of people that signed the Declaration of Independence, like the vast majority of them were under 35 years old. And there was a couple of guys, Ben Franklin being one of them, I think that was, on the older side. And so we think of all these people that maybe experience white wigs, these older guys that just know what they're doing, standing around developing all this. And that simply wasn't the case. And so it makes you, I don't know, makes me stop and think like, okay, why do we have stereotypes around like just experience and age and, who should be doing those things? And, and I think there's some value in that. Don't get me wrong there, but it's a pretty cool illustration of what's possible. And sometimes that isn't the only precursor to being able to do really cool things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I actually didn't know that. That's fascinating. And age is just a number, and numbers are just a limit if we let them be. So that's really cool. So,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna
say, I just think it's beautiful how these different men came together, how these thought leaders at the time were. I mean, think about it. We have a platform today where we can share our opinions freely. Like they were breaking the law to share what they believed, and they didn't all agree with each other, but to one be willing to speak out for something they thought was possible, something they thought could change their lives, maybe change the world, and then just have the faith to go do that, to see that through. I just think it's amazing. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, so a couple things are coming up for me as far as like lessons we can learn from just the founding story. So first of all, the Declaration of Independence is really fascinating because it was written before any of it was true. Like just because they wrote it down on a piece of paper didn't make it so. Like they declared their intention to be free, but they technically still weren't. Like there was still this like battle to be fought and this like, work to be done to create it now. And I love that they didn't wait. Like I love that was the first action, was like, hey, we're going to write this down. We're going to declare it boldly, and we're going to sign our name to it. Even to your point, Drew, like it was totally illegal to do so. And like, had they been caught or charged and appropriately, like they would have probably been put to death.
Yeah.
And so I love like that boldness in declaring like, hey, this is our intent and our belief and what we're going to go create. And here's my name by it. Like, I think that's so powerful for all of us as leaders. Like, what are you committed to? What do you want to declare as what your intention is to now go create for you, for your family, for your business. And how often do we keep ourselves from declaring that verbally or in writing or otherwise because of the fear of like what could happen if we declare it,
Mhm.
or all the what ifs or the reasons why it can't be true or can't happen or won't happen. And I just love that example that they were just willing to be like, you know what? We don't know what's going to happen. And this is our clear and bold intent and declaration. And we're signing our names by it and let it be known to the world. We're going to create freedom. Like, that's so cool to me.
Well,
Yeah.
And something all of us can do.
application to that, like, what if there's something big you want to go create and do, you've got to declare you're going to do it.
Yeah.
How are you going to get people to support you and rally around you if you keep that to yourself?
Well, and
Totally.
I'm glad you made that like point there, because that's exactly what was going through my mind. Is without the declaration, you're not rallying anybody. Like, that was the
Yeah, there's
single
no
moment
rally.
point in time that's like, hey man, we're all on the same page here. And so, really important. Just to kind of clarify my last claim, I looked it up real quick. The average age was,
You're fact checking yourself.
yeah, I am, just to make sure we're all clear. The average age was 44 years old. More than a dozen signers were under 35 years old. And Thomas Jefferson, who drafted the Declaration, was only 33 years old at the time.
Wow.
It's awesome.
And Ben
He was in
Franklin was the oldest signer at 70.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's still, I mean, to your point though, still Tate, like that's a very young population of people. Like, it's not like everyone was like 60,
Oh,
70
yeah.
years old. It's pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. How ironic. I think we talked about like our Jesus year, 33 years old. How ironic that Thomas Jefferson was in his Jesus
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
That's
didn't
so
even
cool.
put that together, but that's a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, I love this idea of like declaring what you intend to create and then signing your name by it and making it public. And that's one of the reasons why, like, inside build in our building, like right on the other side of this wall right here, there's a huge word build with space in the letters. And everyone that comes in, we ask them to write down, like, what are you building, and sign your name by it. And it's fascinating how many people don't do it.
Yeah.
Like,
I've been to the space and watched
like,
people look and
yeah, and they like wiggle out the door, like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, more than half of the people that came to the grand opening did not write on the wall. More than half of the people at each of the events we've had, they don't go sign the wall. And it's just fascinating to me. It's like there's hesitancy to declare what you want to create and sign your name to it. And yeah, like nothing's going to start being rallied, or like things aren't going to start falling into place or happening without that initial declaration and our willingness to say it and declare it and sign our name to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a historian and I want to learn more about all of this because we're talking about this today. And this will come out on July 2nd, but July 2nd was when the final vote was made for it. And we talked a little bit about this before the show started, but there was a lot of disagreement actually in the room about, should we declare? I mean, like, think about what they were doing and and putting their names on that paper, like basically marking themselves as traitors. And I think the lesson there too is like, hey, you can't always wait to have everybody on board in your life, in your business, in what you're doing. Like, it's not always going to be perfect before you can declare and move and get started.
Yeah. Start taking that action.
Well, I think it's important to look at the fact that you do have to have the right people on board. And I agree with what you're saying. Sometimes action's better than no action. Well, it always is, but yeah, you still have to have, you got to have your team with you, or at least the people that are going to help you, especially on a big scale like that. Otherwise, you're just the crazy guy.
Let me share something else that's really cool. Like, I've been Googling as well, and I want to know the story more. But one of the biggest opposers, his name was last name was Dickinson, and John Dickinson. He led the moderates. The radicals were led by John Adams, and he was totally against it. But check this out. Within days of refusing to sign the Declaration, Dixon left politics, picked up a musket, and marched out as a militia officer to fight the British Army. Like, that's the power of like declaring something and taking action.
Rallying.
That person who was the biggest voice against it rallied to to that cause and committed to what they were doing. Like, that's just powerful. That's all. That gave me chills as I was reading it, as you guys were, as you're talking.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
One thing I think to note for everybody though is who we were going up against too. This wasn't just a bunch of rebels saying, "Hey, I'm going to run away from my master," kind of thing. Great Britain at the time was arguably the world power, and granted, we're an ocean away in a time frame where it wasn't like you just hopped across the ocean. And I think if that wasn't the case, it would have been a much different story. I think that was one of the biggest factors we had in our favor, was just geography at the time. But still, I mean, Great Britain was the powerhouse. They were leading the charge, and we stood against them, and to the point where they had to acknowledge that it wasn't worth the fight and let them do what they want, essentially. So I think that's really, really cool, and speaks a lot for who those guys were, because they knew that. That they knew that, man, if Great Britain really wanted to come in here and just not let this happen, and dug their feet in, I'm sure that was a good possibility. But yet they believed in what they did. It was worth it to them. And just created the movement that created the United States. I mean, it just very inspiring.
Yeah, totally inspiring story. And sometimes I feel like it's easy for us to just have it be a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, let this be a blueprint for your life and what you want to declare and what you want to create and what you want to fight for and take a stand for. Like, there's a lot of principles to pull from the story that are a blueprint for you, for me,
Mm-hmm.
for the life you want to live and the lifestyle you want to create and the business or wealth or prosperity that you want to create. That doesn't happen on accident. Just like we learned from this story, like there was so much intention,
Mm-hmm.
imperfect intention and action, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that I love about the story, and George Washington demonstrated this so beautifully, and many others in the story, is that there was this focus on having something work instead of being right. And if you look around today, like, we have largely lost that in like American politics, right? Not that there's no one with that mindset, because I'm sure there are, and I know some. And in general, though, it feels like more people are committed to being right than how do we make something work for the long run, like for the benefit of all and for our future. And it's so cool to see like George Washington's willingness to like put aside his own benefit, his own life, even his desires to go retire and just like stop being involved, because there was this thing bigger than him and something that he wanted to make work so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that was one of the reasons why it's still working to some, in large part, is because people put aside like their desire to be right, and they were more focused on how do we make this work. And I just think in our lives, like in daily interactions and relationships with people, what if we took that on more and stopped trying to be right as much and just looked at like, well, does this work for what we're trying to accomplish, this bigger vision? Does it work for the future? Does it work for everyone? Like, is it a win-win type of thing? And so I think that's a super valuable lesson for us to pull from the story as well. And it's like, where does that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we already touched on it. Maybe it's like just the bigger thing. Maybe that's where that comes from. I'm curious your guys' take. Like, where does that come from? Where does someone find that willingness to get off being right and focus on what works for the greater collective?
Thought coming to mind for me is just the idea of get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because I'm sure for George Washington and everybody that was part of that, once you're putting your name on paper and signing it and sending it, like, what could happen. And it certainly wasn't a comfortable position to be in, I'm sure, for them or their family or anybody that was directly associated with them. And in some ways, I tie it to the idea of just morals in general. Like, if you look at society, it's so easy to go along with, what is the popular culture at the time, what's going on in movies, that we have the choice to decide, like, am I okay with this? Am I okay watching this? Do I support this, or do I, decide, hey, I'm going to draw a line and I'm not going to listen to this. I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to participate in this. And it's just a different level of, um, it's the word I'm looking for, just being true to and understanding who you truly are and what you truly believe, and not kind of swaying with the wind, um, like we see a lot in society, I believe. And I don't
Yeah.
think that that's unique to today either. I think that's been humans forever.
Yeah.
You have the people that want to get out and lead, or are really convicted in what they believe and are willing to walk that line. And I think you've had the people that, you know, uh, surround that in some way, to build
Yeah.
civilization. So I don't know.
Well, so you brought up morality, and there's actually a quote by John Adams about that like the Constitution is written and functions for a moral and a virtuous and a religious people, and it is unfit to govern any others. It's like, that's a really bold statement.
Hmm.
And like, I believe that's part of this whole, like, people willing to go and figure out what works instead of being right, is because there was like, it was so much bigger. It was like divine. It was inspired. It was like God was in the details of this, because of how God wants his children to be able to experience life, like through the lens of freedom and agency. And um so that to me is part of that. Like, there was such a bigger vision, and God was in the details, and I really believe it had people realize that and get off of their own rightness.
Hmm.
Because look, like, there was people who really believed this sticking with the king or whatever was right. Like, it
Hmm.
was safer. It was like
Comfortable.
nothing wrong with it or whatever. And that's what I think that people were able to focus on, like, but does it really work? Like, does it work for like what we could create here and what could be possible here? And the answer was no. Like, it would have been limiting.
Well, and I think that's an important distinction, though, that we can tie really close to, just life, whether it be work or anything else, and that we had at the time something to fall back on. We had a major support structure with a world power at the time that, if things went bad, you needed food, you needed supplies, you needed manufacturing, you needed access to whatever, a navy, like you had all that with Great Britain. And to step out on your own and say, hey, we're not only are we going to declare independence, but and fight you to get it, knowing that we don't have any of that support behind us anymore. And I think that's very similar to what you see, entrepreneurs and stuff experience going out and starting your own business. You have to make that step of, okay, I'm not going to have a regular paycheck. I'm not going to have all that support and access to whatever I had at work anymore. And I'm going to go completely rely on myself and what I can create around me. And it's just a completely different mindset, I think. Um,
Totally.
and and terrifying, but yet people do it.
Well, back to that question you asked, Matt. I think these men were willing to let go of their ego, which is very difficult. It's not. It's much easier said than done. I told you the other day, Matt, I want to do a better job of sharing stories and relating to what's happened in my life. And as we were talking here, I thought about something that happened this last week for me. I had a leader in my church call me up in some ways, and I thought about it, and he could do it because, one, we have a great relationship. He's developed trust and rapport, if you want to use those words, with me over time, and saw something in me in a way I could step up better for myself and others, and said, hey, I gotta share this with you. And it was funny because I thought that night, like, I could be offended by what what he just told me, and I still sometimes get offended when people will call me up or call me out. And in the moment, like I was able to kind of set aside being right. And I thought even that came to mind is like all the reasons why what he told me I could justify why I don't have the time or couldn't make the space for what he was recommending I be doing in my life. And at the same time, it's like being able to set aside your ego helps you get to what works. And grateful for him, grateful he was bold enough to share what he saw with me. And yeah, I mean, think about just our system of government is so unique to most of the world, and it took people getting off of, hey, it was kind of Jefferson and Hamilton both having this idea of what our government looked like and coming together and saying, how do we take the best pieces of these ideas and create something that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome and inspiring, right? Like I believe that's a lesson for all of us to take from the story and from the founding and to celebrate this year and then to implement in our own life. It's like, get off being right. And that's gonna be really hard. Your brain's wired to keep you right and keep you safe. But just having the awareness of it even can help you realize, like, wow, am I more focused on being right, or am I more focused on something bigger than me and something that can work for people and work for my family and work for my business? And that can be super, super useful. I also want to take this opportunity as we're like publicly, discussing this topic to declare our intention and more specifically my intention as far as like what is bigger than me that I'm committed to, that I'll burn for.
See if we pick up our
And
muskets, Tate, after he says
yeah,
this.
I'm curious now. I'm ready to hear this.
and look, it's still freedom. It's always been about that. It was a very different type back then, though. The story of the founding was a very much like a governmental freedom, like taxation, religious, get the government out of our affairs so that we can practice and live the way we want. And that still matters. And there's a different type of freedom that most people in our world and even in our free country aren't experiencing. And that's like the internal personal freedom to be okay with who you are, to not need a distraction, to not need vices and sedation, as our friend Nathan calls it, in order to find happiness or peace. And that's the bigger thing for me that I want to rally around. That's like the declaration that I am making in my life and in my business, that God wants us to be free. And God wants us to have governmental freedom for sure. And even in a country where we have in large part had that for 250 years, how many people in our country are actually free? And and what are we going to do about it?
Well, and what specifically are those things that are making us feel unfree? And I think it's important to try to identify for each one of us, because I think it's different for everybody. It's funny you that's the example, or what you're declaring is, I was in a meeting with a famous accountant that does a lot of financial training for, honestly, like CEO level people, just everything from personal finance to business finance. I mean, just different courses. And I was in there with a room of CEOs and went through the exercise of, if you could do anything you want today, what would it be, kind of thing. And, you go around the room and basically you could summarize every one of and this was a room of CEOs, like high level, some of, varying size of businesses, but it all came back to freedom. Like you could literally summarize. And then he made the point that he goes, by and large, that's the exact same response out of every seminar that I do. And it's just funny that is the case, that we truly are that, like, in some way, whatever that looks like, that's how you can summarize what people are looking for. Because even if it's
Yeah.
finances, you can say, hey, I want $5 million. Well, why do you want $5 million? So I can have the freedom to go hang out with my kids and live in this place and, whatever it is. It's so you can do what you want to do, which is freedom.
Yeah. What I it's funny, Tate, and I think we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but like you ask people what they want, it's almost always time or money or freedom. Like those 2 to 3 answers are the most common you get. And to our listener, you always hear Matt say you always have a choice. Like you have a choice to be free too. Like you have a choice to be free where you are right now. I think sometimes we make this mistake of like, I will be free when I make $1 million. I'll be free when, I don't know, when I don't have to work 8 hours a day anymore. And that's just simply not true. You can be free where you are today. You can create, that doesn't always mean you won't have constraints or some things you have to operate inside of, but
or a
lot of
battle
that,
to fight for
Right.
5 years. Yeah.
right. And a lot of it is like, hey, I'm going to have a choice that I'm showing up at my job 40 hours a week because it's going to help me create this in my life or create this in my family. And that can be freeing when you make that choice, when you have some intention behind why you're doing what you're doing, or free yourself by walking away, doing something big, declaring something huge, and starting the business, creating the company, building the plan. Like, you have a choice to be free. You don't have to wait.
Well, for me, I think I would almost even argue, for me personally, it doesn't matter. All the stuff and like your goals and everything else. Yeah, we have those thinking it creates freedom, but the truth is none of it does, because you could hit those benchmarks and it's the next thing. So the only true freedom comes from your mindset and contentness with where you are right now.
Yeah.
And that's the choice. That's a choice. Those are the choices you have to make. And yeah, it may be some adjustments, but they're all things that you can choose starting right now to be free.
Yeah.
And there is no single item in the world that'll make you feel free.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could even, I know Matt's probably bursting ready to say something.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of freedom can come in alignment. Can I create alignment in different areas of my life? Because look, I used to say, like, I want to be able to be free, and maybe I want to have a bunch of real estate paying me money every once so I can do what I want all the time. It's like, what I've kind of realized about myself is I love working and I love being active and being engaged in things. So why not create work that is in alignment with what I want, so I can do the things I naturally want to do, but feel free because it's ultimately me doing who I am, being who I am.
And what you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, really, I would say, to sum up like our discussion today and like the big take home is that like we're mentioning, that you don't have to wait for something to be free. Like, it's a choice, and that like leaders have a choice. Like, leadership is a choice. And that's like the biggest message of our whole show, is that you get to choose, and that it has nothing to do with your circumstances. And to me, that's what the Declaration of Independence demonstrated so powerfully, like we talked about, is they weren't free.
Not yet. Well,
And
they
then
were.
Right. Because as soon as they declared it, they were literally like, I'm not waiting for this. They went and lived as if, which is so powerful. Like, they didn't wait. They quit following the law. Like, they literally were like, hey, today we're free, even though they technically weren't, So it's just so cool that, like, declare it. Like, declare what that is and find it now, and quit lying to yourself that you have to wait for all this stuff to happen to experience freedom and to be happy. And that's exactly what the founding fathers did with the Declaration of Independence. They're like, we're declaring it and we're signing our name to it. And then they went and acted as if they were free.
I think it's totally ironic that, completely unplanned, where here we are talking about freedom in a different context than, the 4th of July freedom that we started talking about. Like, it's cool that they kind of just completely came in alignment in this conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I believe that if we get back to the deeper divine principles that created the governmental freedom to begin with, we would actually experience more of it. But we've lost, like, we've got off track. And we're talking about all the noise and all the stuff. And it's like, even just like these types of internal personal freedom that we're talking about, like, if everyone in leadership in our country would get on board with that, like, we would experience more of the, governmental type freedom that the Constitution was created to protect. And I get that that's not that simple. And yeah, Tate, I love it. It's like, these are the principles that ultimately were underneath the happenings and the actions being taken by people in the
Mhm.
story.
So I want to speak to our listener with what I'm going to say next. Like, if you're listening to all of this, what if you decided today to be free? Free from guilt, free from sin because of Jesus Christ, free from obligation to do something you don't want to do, to go choose what you're going to do each day. Like, what if you decided, I'm going to live free today? What does that look like? What does that change in your life?
Mhm.
I think I'm bummed that it's going to be a few weeks before this comes out, because I want to share this with a couple of people.
Yeah.
Just snatch the recording off of
Yeah, right.
Riverside and
Uh,
share it. Yeah, I've thought
but
that too.
I'm just going to give an example for me, like, and we can say it all day long, but the moment that I realized that I have a choice was probably the most freeing moment in my life. That alone. Um, and with that, a lot of the decisions I was making didn't necessarily change. It wasn't like I uprooted my life and everything. Like, my decision making process was very different. It was simply knowing and not feeling like I was making decisions because of somebody else or a circumstance or anything else. It was just knowing that I was making the decision that I wanted to make
And
and that
so
I had
your
a choice.
experience changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
even if it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do, but I decided to anyways because it was maybe the best thing to do, I knew that I had that choice and that's why I was making that choice. And so I had that. And such a freeing moment when you can just acknowledge that nobody can make you do anything. Like you're free to make those choices and actions and everything you want to do. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. It's good stuff, guys. Okay. Happy 4th of July, everyone. Celebrate freedom as we have experienced it, and also recognize, like, to go create and celebrate the freedom that you have direct impact over, which is starting primarily with you.
Mhm.
And don't wait for the government to do XYZ for you to experience freedom. Choose that today in the way that we've discussed. And like, to your point, Tate, it is the most powerful moment when you realize, like, wow, I always have a choice. It's like, now I'm free. I'm free to
I mean,
choose.
and it's so silly because we could say it out loud, like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I get to make
But
that
it's
choice."
not until you
But when you
actually believe that.
internalize that and you feel it, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I do." Like,
Yeah.
And if you want to do something crazy, go declare your freedom to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Declare that
Yeah.
choice.
yeah. It's such a hard
Yeah.
thing for a lot of people to understand if they haven't experienced it. Like, and it's
Yeah.
amazing when they do. So
Okay. Awesome. Be a leader, declare your freedom, and today's the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.